Welcome to the Genealogy Happy Hour, a place where new family historians can learn to document their family histories and celebrate their new discoveries. I'm Amy.
And I'm Penny, and we're here to help you discover your family tree from the beginning. Welcome to episode 38. In this episode, we are going to interview Janine Adams, who is a professional organizer from St. Louis, Missouri, who is also the owner of Peace of Mind Organizing and has a blog, Organizing Your Family History. So it is because of that blog that we've invited Janine Adams to our podcast to learn a little bit more about digital organization with our genealogical papers and documents and things like that, so we can do away with paper on the most part. She's gone from paper saving to digital saving, and that's what she's going to talk about.
That's great. It's something that we can all get pointers and tips on, and saving your genealogical research digitally is going to help it last much longer and safeguard it for future as well. But Janine has suggested a wine for us. One of the ones that she likes is Walla Walla Cabernets, like Canoe Ridge, Seven Hills, Waterbrook, and Henry Earl Estates. We've chosen the Canoe Ridge Cab, which has a earthiness with a dark cherry and a hint of vanilla. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate Janine giving us those recommendations for some really good red wines.
Yes.
So, all right. So let's start with our chat with Janine.
Well, welcome, Janine, to our podcast. This is episode 38. We're so happy that you could join us.
I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Wondered if you could just start off by telling us a little bit about your genealogy organization journey. I know you started with paper, and you now rarely use paper at all. So how did that all come about?
Sure. When I started doing genealogy, going on 20 years ago, it was all paper, handwritten pedigree charts with no source citations, and it was a big hot mess. And so in about 2012, I did a big genealogy do-over where I started from scratch. And at that point, I started blogging as well. So I can look back and actually see what I did because I talked about it so much. But I would print everything out, and I had some paper checklists, and that's where my comfort level was, because everything I downloaded, say from Ancestry, was a big gobbledygook file name, and I would just get lost instantly in my hard drive because I had no strategy for it. And then gradually I developed a file naming protocol that gave me comfort and a folder structure, so I knew that I could find the documents, and I stopped printing and instead started downloading. And it also helped that my eyes were getting older and I couldn't see those like a printed out 8.5 by 11 census sheet. I literally had to get out a magnifying glass. So when I could just download them and open them in preview and zoom in, that made my life a lot easier. And now I literally don't print anything out. I can stay at my desk doing all my research without getting up. And before, my files were in a file cart that was a few steps away. My printer's a few steps away. Everything's easier now.
That's a really good point about the census records and some of those very, very detailed records. It's a lot easier to see them on screen because you can really zoom in and get those detail that you can't see once you print it out.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
So, and I do like the file naming protocol. That's
really important.
Very important, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So speaking of your file or your folder structure, so you have a digital filing system now that you are happy with, and can you tell us how that kind of looks on your computer? What your system is?
Sure. I use a Mac. And I have a genealogy folder, and under that I have a surnames folder. And I put the surnames folder in the sidebar in my Finder, which is, I think, on a Windows machine called Windows Explorer. I can't remember, I'm sorry. But so my surnames folder is where everything gets downloaded to. And then within that folder, I have a folder for each surname that's sort of a direct line surname.
Right.
And then at some point, when I finally wised up and started doing more collateral research, I created a collateral folder as well. And that sort of it has the same, pretty much the same structure as the direct line folder. It's just, it keeps things a little more separate. So I'll have the same surnames in there, and sometimes different surnames with the collaterals because it goes out wider. And then within each folder, so I have a surname folder, let's say it's Adams, I'll have a folder for each individual person, and that's where that person's documents go. So I try to keep it simple. I don't nest it any further than that. It's not like a family tree. So I'll have all my people whose last name was Adams, who are direct line ancestors, together in that folder. And then the wives will say, like, Adams, parentheses, Rasco, which was her maiden name, Beatrix. And then I have her birth and death dates there because there's so many similar names. So that helps me differentiate them.
Okay, that makes me think. One thing I struggle with is the women. When you're putting the women in, I have been filing women under their maiden names, just because that's how I research them most of the time, rather than under their married name, and then putting their married name kind of in parentheses.
Right.
Well, there's no one right way to do it, right?
No,
so whatever works for you is great. And that makes a lot of sense, especially in my family tree. It's the woman's maiden name that's there. I think I didn't want to separate my couples into different folders.
Right.
So that's why I did it that way.
Yeah, and I thought about that when I was doing mine. I'm like, well, you're not going to be with your with your husband, but that does make it difficult.
Yeah, and that's what I found, because I do have my women separated. They have their own folder in their own surname folder, but then I have duplicates of, like, the marriage record. The marriage record's in his folder and in her folder, so you end up with duplicates.
Right, as do I,
Okay, I do that as well.
Okay.
Duplicate. Now, because you can with the digital. You can put them anywhere you want.
It's very easy, yes. That's true. Now, do you use a cloud-based storage, or is everything on your hard drive with the backup?
Well, everything's on my hard drive, but I use Reunion software, and it has me storing things in Dropbox.
Right.
So I have to admit, I find it all mildly confusing about with Dropbox, whether things are on my hard drive or only in the cloud. I think they're both. And then I also have an external hard drive where everything's backed up, and then I back up to Backblaze as well.
Right. Well, I'm a Mac user as well, and I use Reunion. And yes, Reunion does have you, in order to use their app, you have to have your data in Dropbox, because it syncs up with Dropbox. So
okay.
Is it also on my hard drive, though? I think it is.
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah, and I use.
But it is like a miracle. I mean,
it is.
I download documents to my hard drive, and on my phone I can pull them up.
Yeah,
it feels like a miracle.
It is, right? How did we do without that?
Yeah.
I know. I use Roots Magic. I have a Windows-based computer, and I use OneDrive. I think is where all my stuff is copied to. So it's all out in the
Microsoft.
Yeah, and I back it up to Backblaze as well. That's a good point. Okay, so my question is, or one of my big questions is how do you find a document when you've got all these documents put in there, and you need to find something later on? How do you find it on the computer? Because I know if I do have a binder system that I've have a log for that I can go to a physical document pretty quickly, but to find one that I've filed digitally, what's the secret to finding those files?
Well, I think the secret is keeping up with your filing. So, because if they're filed, you'll find them. So you have a folder structure that makes sense to you.
Okay.
And in my case, it's by person under their surname.
Okay.
And then part of when I download a document, I don't file it out. It hangs out in the surnames folder, like at the top of the folder, until I've actually what I call processed it. So I've created a source citation. I've entered all the data from the document into Reunion, and I've attached the document to the source citation, the record.
Okay.
Then, when all that's done, then I move it, I file it into the individual person.
Okay.
So I have sometimes, frequently, a backlog of documents that need to be because I've gone crazy online downloading things. Right now I have this backlog backlog, and I wrote in my log today, no more research until backlog is gone. But now I can easily tell if it's unprocessed, as long as my backlog doesn't get too big, which it doesn't.
Okay.
And if I'm looking for a document, I just go to that person. And part of the secret sauce is having a consistent file naming protocol. Mm-hmm. So I've got the folder structure that we discussed,
right.
But I also name all my files the same way so that I can also easily find them. So would you like me to tell you what my
that would be great
protocols?
Yes.
I always start with the year, and then the type of document. So let's say, let's pull up a real life one so I don't have to make it up. 1930 U.S. Census, and then I put a hyphen and the name of the person on the census, and then the main person. So usually, I hate to be sexist, but it's usually the head of household, which is usually the man.
Okay.
Hyphen the location. So, 1930 census, George Washington Adams, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay, and when you do the name, you do first name, then last name, not last name, then first name.
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty loosey-goosey. So when I do the folder, I do last name, first name. But when I do the file name, I do first name, last name. Don't ask me why.
Okay.
I think because I don't want a comma in the file name, and I don't like looking at it without a comma.
Okay. I know
I
started to follow your lead of the year first, but I come up with a lot of things, especially my photographs. I don't know the year. So when you don't know the year, do you make a guess, or do you just not put a year in?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't have a lot of photographs in this file structure.
Okay.
So these are mostly documents I'm talking about. I have not really dealt with photographs yet. I have a box of them.
Okay.
So I don't have a good question for that, but good answer, but I imagine my answer would be I do a guess.
Okay, well, let's say, forget it's a photograph. What if it was like a letter you had that had no date on it? It was, a letter that
Right.
you know the years that person lived. Would you just...
Start with unknown? Would you start with just unknown?
Maybe.
UNK or something like that?
Yeah, or maybe a range, if I could narrow it down. But
because at least in a document, like you said, you'd have a lifespan of a person, and you could do a range on that probably.
Right.
Okay.
I suspect what I'd actually do, I don't know if this is consistent with everything else, but it just goes to show there's no one right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably, if I had a person it was associated with, in their folder, I'd create a subfolder that said personal correspondence or letters or something like that.
Okay.
And so that I could get my hands on it. I do have a really long letter that my grandfather wrote my grandmother before they were married. It's like, I don't know, it's like 30 pages. He wrote big.
Oh my God.
And he was telling his bride to be the skeletons in his closet. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I know.
That's a treasure.
Meteor skeletons that I found. But, and in that case, even though I have a date on it, I did give it its own folder because I scanned each page separately.
Okay.
So it's just in a folder with called
correspondence.
Dave's letter to B.
No,
yeah,
okay.
Whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of latitude to do things the way that you think will work with your brain. Also wanting to make it clear for people who are looking at it after you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Very important.
Yeah.
Now, when you do scan, do you use a particular format, DPI, or equipment, or?
Well, I have two scanners, and one is a sheet-fed scanner. It's the Fujitsu Scan Snap. It's the precursor to the IX500. I think it's called the S1500M. And it's just a sheet-fed scanner. So I use that for non-precious documents and hardier stuff. And then I also splurged on a Fujitsu Scan Snap SV600, which is that contactless scanner. Do you know that one?
No.
I think I know what I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It kind of looks like the top of an overhead projector from back in the day. I don't know how old you guys are, but if you know what overhead projectors are. But you lay the document flat in front of the scanner. It comes with a little mat, and then it waves a light over the scanner from above, so nothing touches the document. it sounds really great, and it is really great, except so many documents want to curl. And so what I ended up doing to try to deal with that is buy a piece of glass that is non-glare. That's the word I'm looking for. Non-glare glass that I'll put over the document to straighten it, blend it out.
Good solution.
And then it scans through the glass.
Excellent.
In any case, that's proven. It was like a fun toy. I mean, I just couldn't resist it, and it was like $600 or something. So it's kind of an expensive thing not to resist. I should have probably resisted, but occasionally it's very handy. Although the fact is, I don't use it a ton because usually, again, I'm not really scanning that much fragile stuff. I mostly, if I scan at all, it's like my ancestors' Civil War pension files that NARA has sent me. And then I can just put that through the sheet fed scanner. And the DPI, it's whatever the default is. But it's good. So it's probably because I can blow things up big. Like I'm thinking of my pension files, so it's probably 300. Would be my guess.
Nice. Okay.
And I think that it scans to, I think, PDF. But obviously, I'm not 100% clear since I'm speaking so slowly. I don't pay that much attention, I guess. Sorry.
Okay. Good.
So another thing that you talk about is obviously a big thing, and this is a big thing for me too, is going paperless. Having things digital, not printing out a lot of paper. Because back when we would have the census form and we had files, I would put that same census in everybody's file that was listed on that census, and it's just so much wasted paper.
And effort.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then we'd be saving trees if we stopped doing all that stuff. You list in one of your blogs 8 reasons to go paperless, and I wondered if you could share a few of the most important reasons to you to go paperless.
Sure. Well, I already shared one, which is they're so much easier to read.
Yes.
And you can adjust the contrast, you can make things bigger, and that's huge for me, because my vision is not what it used to be. I also like that it's way easier to file an electronic document. You just drag it, and rather than opening a folder or a binder, don't even get me started on binders, how hard they are to use, and putting the paper in. And then you mentioned a big one, which is they're really easy to duplicate. So if you wanted to put a census record in each person's folder on electronically, it takes a few clicks versus photocopies and opening multiple folders. And I like that I always have my files with me. I use a laptop, and I'm not big on tablets in my genealogy research. So when I go somewhere to research, I always take my MacBook with me, and everything is there. It's so wonderful. When I think about back in the day, I would select which folders I thought I'd need at the library, and I had a big thick folder of this crazy pedigree chart from when I first started out that may or may not be accurate but provides hints, and I would carry that around. And with it's all there. I don't have to even worry about it, and it's easy to back up.
Yeah, there is nothing worse than being on a research trip and not having the file that you want or not access to that.
Although I will say that I listened to your guys' preparing for a research trip episode earlier this year, and the point you make about bringing along some backup that's not electronic just in case you can't take your device or your laptop into a place is a good one.
Yeah.
It would be really horrible to not even have a piece of paper to write on. So that is a good point.
Yeah.
But I'm planning to take a big research trip this year, and my intention is to try really hard to know the requirements of each place I go. Although I know that one ends up going to different places off the plan. So
where are you planning on going?
Kentucky.
Oh, nice.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So, I'm excited. I haven't been for a while. I've been spending my money going to conferences and my time, which is great. But this year I decided to go to on a research trip. But the National Genealogical Society conference is in my city, so
that's true.
I will be going to that.
Yes,
perfect,
yes.
perfect. I know Amy and I had so much fun on our trip to Ohio, although it was freezing.
Yeah.
We're planning another one.
Yeah,
this
and
year.
I've done a lot of research in Kentucky, and the state archives in Frankfurt are lovely place to research. So very nice.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been there a couple of times, but I just keep getting better in my genealogy research, so there's always more to find, and I know I'll use the repository better this time than I did last.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the more research we do, the more we find, then we have to kind of go back and retrace our steps and utilize the new information that we've gotten. So good. Well, enjoy your trip. That'll be fun.
Thanks.
And speaking of like practice and doing better and whatever, you have you've mentioned in your blog that you have a 30 by 30 challenge, which is 30 minutes a day for 30 days goal for doing research. And I love this, and I did this last month, and my goal for this year is to do it 4 more times this year. I thought 4 times is good. That's not every month, because that would be a little overwhelming probably for me. But wondered, how did you come up with this fabulous idea?
I know myself, and I know that external accountability is really helpful for me. And I think at the time when I first started doing it, I was transcribing one of my great-great-grandfather's Civil War pension files, which is a really sort of tedious task. And I know, because I'm a professional organizer, I know that breaking tasks into small bites really makes them feel less overwhelming. So I thought, what, if I do this a half an hour a day, I can really get somewhere. And I thought, well, let's see if other people want to join me. And it's been great. That was, I think, in 2015. And I know that when I have a challenge going, it gets me researching every day because, it's my challenge. So I feel like I almost always live up to it. Not always. Sometimes life gets in the way. But it is what helps me put genealogy research at the top of my priority list instead of the bottom. And I know that frequent research that's not very long, frequent brief research helps me stay focused because I'm not going to go chasing bright, shiny objects when I only have a half an hour. I mean, certainly one can research more than a half an hour in the 30 by 30 challenge, but in my life, it's just too busy, so I stop at the half an hour. And if I'm doing it like before I go to work in the morning. So it keeps me focused, which I really appreciate.
I love this. And do you stick to strictly research for that 30 minutes or for the challenge part of it, or do you consider... like if you're going to scan some documents, that's your 30 minutes, or is it strictly research?
Oh, no, absolutely. Anything goes. Okay. A lot of the people who, when people decide to participate and want to comment on the blog post, they'll sometimes tell me what they're working on. And a lot of people are spending the time working on organizing their research, which makes perfect sense since they found me because they're interested in organizing their research. Right. So they might be scanning or whatever. I almost always am doing the research part, maybe because my research is organized. Yeah. I don't have it.
You're already organized.
I do have this little backlog that I need to take care of. But to me, processing a downloaded document, finding a downloaded document, and then downloading it, that's just part A of the research, right? The next part is extracting the information and doing all the things you need to do with it to benefit from it, and then the last step of that is filing. So it's all organizing, or it's all research, I guess is a better way to think of it.
No, you're right.
No, it's true. It's every step is important. Now, you did mention overwhelming. What tips or tricks do you have in coping with that overwhelming feeling when you see these stacks and stacks of documents and research piling up and all of the notes? How do you help someone be able to tackle that?
Well, if it's a stack of paper and they want to, it sort of depends what they want to do. But if it's a stack of paper and their goal is to file it all, then, and if it's a stack that's sort of a hodgepodge, just a stack, an organic stack, if you will, right. I'd suggest, and you already have a filing system, I'd suggest doing a broad sort that sort of goes with your file system. So in my case, it would be by family, probably. Just try to get all the Adamses together and all the Browns together so that when you file, it's easier. So you're not going back and forth so much.
You're making the big pile into numerous smaller piles.
Yeah, some smaller piles. And that can be a task that you can check off. And then that doesn't feel quite so overwhelming because that's not hard to do. And then maybe the next step is to sort that one of those piles into individuals or couples or however you're doing it. And so just take it step by step so that each bite feels doable, because that's the trick to getting past overwhelm. The other huge helpful thing to do is to have a timer. I mean, so you can say, I'm going to sort this whole stack, or you can say, I'm just going to sort for 30 minutes and then I'll stop. The hard part about that is, if it's paper, is maintaining what order you've created until you finish, right?
Until the next time, right.
Things get messier before they get cleaner, typically.
Yeah.
So I think it makes more sense to maybe think of it in terms of a finished project, like, small projects, like divide them into your 4 surnames, and then from that go with whatever the next step is until you're finally filing. If what you're hoping to do is not actually file that stack of papers, but scan them and create a folder structure, figure out the structure that you want to use, and then do the same thing. Just to sort the papers so that you're not all over the place. It just makes it easier to process when there's, like things together. But I always tell people, if they're doing that, you don't have to wait until everything is scanned before you start processing your new documents into your new electronic folder structure. So, decide today, okay, I'm going to stop printing documents that I've downloaded. Instead, I'm just going to download them and file them, and just file them from this point forward, and then work on your backlog.
I see. So then don't keep adding to the pile. Start your...
Exactly.
Right.
You're never,
okay.
The pile's never going to go away if you add into it.
Right.
And then, and most people don't want to spend their genealogy time filing. So you want to do research. So, just start your new way now. And then you don't even have to, if you want to, if your goal is to be completely paperless, if you will, come up with a systematic way to go through your paper files and scan them. But know that you don't have to. Again, there's no one right way to do it. I have paper files from when I started out that I haven't scanned and I never look at.
Okay, right.
So, if I did look at them, I would scan them. Now.
Right, prioritize.
And then I would probably toss them, unless they feel like originals that I need to keep.
Yeah. Janine, you're also the co-author of the Paperless Genealogy Guide, along with Brooks Duncan of Document Snap, right? And
yes. Yeah, Brooks is a scanning expert, which is why I was so lame in my response about the technical side of scanning. And tell that to him.
He's got all the answers there. And I know that's available on the Document Snap website.
Yeah, there's a link to it on my website, organizeyourfamilyhistory.com.
Okay.
Under genealogy guides, and that will take you to Brooks's website, or you could just go straight to documentsnap.com.
Okay,
and I think it's about 50 pages, and it's $9. It has lots of info. It goes into detail about folder structure and file naming protocols, and it's not just mine, but other examples as well. And then lots of information about scanning and backing up and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful addition to anybody's library. That especially those of us that need to get better organized, whatever.
Well, thank you. Brooks and I did a presentation at Roots Tech. When was that? In 2017. About going paperless. That was fun.
Good.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on our podcast today, Janine. We are going to have links to your paperless genealogy guide and your website, your blog, and whatnot for everyone. And really appreciate all the tips and tricks you've given us.
Well, it's been my pleasure. It's been fun talking to you. Hey, can I throw out there that little plug for my podcast?
Please
which
do.
Is not about genealogy.
Yeah.
But it's called Getting to Good Enough, and it's about letting go of perfectionism so you can do more of what you love.
That's a good one.
In genealogy, sometimes we get a little hung up on perfection, and that can hold us back. So I just wanted to mention that. You can find it at gettingtogoodenough.com.
I think that's a good life lesson for all of us. We can get so fixated on having this one, everything perfect in our lives that we forget to stop and enjoy
really paralyzing.
it. Yes,
and
absolutely.
and on that podcast, you have an episode on genealogy as well, don't you?
Yes, we do. We talk about, my co-host Shannon has an amazing treasure trove of original documents that her mother had when her mother moved into assisted living. Shannon didn't even know about it, that she had all these documents. And she got really overwhelmed about what to do with them, and she felt a real responsibility to handle them perfectly because they're something that others in her family could use. Mm-hmm. And so we sort of talked through an approach that allowed her to get past that perfectionism and get it filed in such a way that she can actually get her arms around it and do something with it.
Gotcha. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your time and all your tips.
Yes.
Well, you're more than welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
All right.
All right. Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Please email us with any questions or comments at genealogyhappyhour@gmail.com.
Visit our website, www.genealogyhappyhour.com, for additional resources, books, and wines. Don't forget to drink responsibly
and never drink around genealogical documents.